Hello out there and welcome. I'm Ryan.
I'm Jeff.
And this is Stirring Up the Lees. In today's episode,
we're looking at point scores.
Yes, we're going to critique point scores themselves.
What we're talking about is the 100-point rating system. And if you ever go into a wine shop, 90 points, 91 points, 95 points.
4.5 stars.
That's what we're talking
17
about.
17.5 points. It's very confusing.
Think of it like grade school. So you have F, you have your D, you have your C, you have your B, and then your A is 80 points plus. In actual fact, the scale is really shrunk. And so it's not like we're using the full 100 points anymore. It's more a 20-point scale because most scores are somewhere in an 80 to 100 range, with the vast majority of scores really concentrated perhaps between 87 to 93. What do those scores mean? The saying goes, you need that 90-point line. Which I don't know why that became the demarcation that suggested that a wine was great. But now we have point inflation, so wines have never been rated higher.
Well, wines have never been better.
Wines have never been better, but there's a lot of mediocre wine that's rated quite highly.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a calibration on the part of reviewers where wine does keep increasingly getting better as a whole across the globe. But we need to take that into account because we can't just keep giving wines higher and higher scores because at the end of the day, 100 is the limit.
100 is the limit, and some critics have prophesized a wine that will get more than 100 points, whether it's 100 plus, 100 plus plus, 100 plus plus plus, to signify that the bar keeps getting pushed and pushed. But in my mind, a 90-point wine should be a wine that gets you excited. That's not just an everyday wine that you open and you can mindlessly sip. There should be something in the bottle that's really exciting.
And now people will go to a liquor store and they'll just scan the shelf for the little sticker with the point score as opposed to researching about the wine or reading the back label or stuff like that.
So we did no research. The only thing we did is literally walked into a liquor store, tried to find some high point scoring wines. In this case, we found two 93-point wines. Different price points. One's $15, one's roughly $25. But we know nothing about these wines other than the fact that they're from Argentina and both of them are Malbec.
And both of them are rated by JamesSuckling.com. Whether it was him, whether it was somebody who works for him.
And we're going to see if they deserve those 93-point scores. So why don't we start with wine number one?
So, wine number one. As you can see, 93 points, JamesSuckling.com, right on the capsule. This is the Broquel Barrel Select Malbec 2019.
$15, 93 points. 93 is a pretty exceptional point score.
And so I think we're just right off the bat delving into an issue with the point scoring system. I imagine somebody sitting down to review this wine in a vast flight of wines, be it 12 or 20, and going through, giving them a couple minutes of their time, giving them point scores, and then going on about their day, going on to a next flight. So wines like this that just are so in your face with oak and ripe fruit, they'll stand out in a flight, and they could lead the reviewer to think this is a higher quality wine.
I think James Suckling does a combination of blind and sighted. So in some cases he knows what the wine is, in others he doesn't. Don't know what the case was for this wine, but you're not tasting or analyzing the wine like you would when you're at home. You're not drinking it, first of all, you're spitting. So even that changes the experience. And when you're going through that number of wines at a sitting, it's going to affect how you perceive wines.
You get one quick glimpse into the wine and you give it a review, and that number sticks with it.
I think critics like to say, the score doesn't really matter. It's all about the note and what I write up. But in actual fact, that's really not true. No one cares about the note except for the person who wrote it.
So it's a $15 wine, and let's talk about this 93 points.
You have the brambly fruit that's definitely recognizably Malbec.
Yeah. And it's more elegant on the palate than I would have anticipated from the nose. I was thinking big, bold, plush, maybe one-dimensional. But there's a bit of finesse there. There's actually pretty good acid structure. The tannin is well integrated.
Almost silky, yeah. It has a nice, juicy quality to the fruit, which I like. It's not overripe. The oak is there, but also works in the context of the fruits.
If you're comparing a whole flight of $15 wines, then if you're shifting the scale like the bell curve, maybe this is a 93 point $15 wine, but that's not how it's advertised on the wine.
No, someone like James Suckling doesn't, to my knowledge, score his wines that way, where the score is tied to the price of the wine. And this is just 93 points in the world of wine. It's supposed to be an objective quality statement, which is obviously a next to impossible thing to do. And that's what you're aiming for, is you're trying to be objective. If you're a good reviewer, I think you're pushing aside your biases and you're saying, okay, within the context of this variety, this style, where does it land in the world of wine? And I would say this is good, but this certainly, in my mind, wouldn't land at 93 points. It wouldn't land at 93 points for a couple reasons. I think it's relatively simple, but there's two things here. You have brambly, juicy fruit, and you have oak. And although I think those are both, in this case, finessed and high quality, there's not the complexity that you'd expect from a 93 point wine.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing would be you don't have the concentration or richness either that you'd expect from something that's higher quality. I think this is a great midweek Malbec.
Midweek Malbec.
At 93 points, you're expecting a blockbuster wine. Not necessarily like a full throttle bold red, but you're expecting like something outstanding. And this is good, but it's certainly not great. In my mind, this would be closer to an 88 to 89 range.
And that's one of the biggest issues with point scoring is there's no rubric and every reviewer is different. Like you're saying, we're comparing Argentinian Malbec to a German sweet Riesling and we're using the same point scale, and it can be a bit arbitrary.
And unfortunately what happens is the moment you don't give a wine 90 points, your point score is useless to the winery and to the retailer, to the wine store. Because if it's not 90, they're just not going to use it. Because it may as well be 80 or 50 at that point. Anything below 90 is unusable. But I think that's unfair. That's a disservice in my mind to the consumer, because there's a lot of really great wines in that 87 to 89 point range. And that's where you find like great value wines.
I'd love to know specifically when it went from supposedly being 50 to 100 points, much like grade school markings, to this such confined space where an 87 all of a sudden is bad. Jeffrey, wine number 2 is La Valle Las Acequias. It says Malbec Oak 2017, but this one actually came with a little capsule label, jamessuckling.com, 93 points, and the tasting note. Does anybody read it? No.
So I think we're at $25 for this wine, same point score, and we'll see, should you spend the extra $10. Quite different in style than the first wine, I would say. Already it seems like this is a little bit more sweet, confected fruits.
Favorite word.
Doesn't have the juiciness that the first wine had, just on the nose.
I think this has some more savory character as well.
It's not as fruit driven necessarily as the first one.
Yeah. This one makes you ponder a little bit more than the first one, which you can expect from the $10 increase in price. It's a little bit more serious.
Feels like there may be a bit of sweetness here, and just got a little bit of grittiness to the tannin as well, which to me slightly detracts from the wine.
I think they're hiding something maybe with that.
Overall, I wouldn't say this is a better wine, actually. If anything, I'd probably like this slightly less. So to me, this would be around maybe 88 points range.
I would not give either of these wines 93. Not that I've rated a whole lot of wines in my life, but I would say they're a very similar quality level.
Yeah, the fact that they're both 93, that adds up.
So that adds up.
Let's take
the number's too high.
For me, why this would be 88 is a combination of, again, it's simple. You know, it has the jammy kind of red fruit, strawberry jam, and then it has the oak, but there's not much else, maybe a slight savory component. But I think it's lacking the clarity and definition to the fruit that I would expect from something higher quality, especially the 93 point range. There's that perception of sweetness, which to me, even though it's trying to be a serious wine, kind of detracts from the overall balance of the wine. And then also the grittiness to the tannins.
Yeah, I think that's what the sweetness is hiding. I think there's some grittiness to it. So there you go, 2 wines. I think we took away from that they were scored too highly, but they're at a reasonably same quality level.
You're not going to be disappointed in these wines. And that's the thing. The fact that we don't think they're 93-point wines doesn't mean we think they're bad wines. It's the opposite. I think these are good wines for the price.
If you're looking through the eyes of a consumer, if they go in and they grab a 93-point jamessuckling.com and they bring it home for the family or whatever, they get excited to have it with some fancy steak, and they're not happy with it, then they should think about who reviewed it and less about the wine itself.
Yeah.
Because if you find that your palate doesn't necessarily align with a certain reviewer, then take the extra second when you see the 93 to see who gave it the 93.
And it also doesn't always have to be critics either. It can just be wine store staff. And sometimes they know their products better than anyone.
That's one way I like to shop, is when you go in, and the place I tend to go to around here, they'll have like little cards that they've written up in store, and they'll say, oh, this is a must-have that we recently got in, because they're tasting damn near every wine that they sell. And I don't have time to go through their entire shop. I think we'll start using point scores on the show. What do you think?
I like that idea, because at the very least it kind of gives a firm stand in terms of what we really think about a wine.
It's been a slice.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Did you read this note?
No.
A spicy nose. You were all about confected fruit. Diffusing lots of anise and black pepper, as well as ripe strawberries and raspberries. When did they taste this? Very pretty and arresting. I was not arrested.